I'll never be the best in what I do. Never. Because the day I become the best in what I do, that means I have stopped learning. You know that Coca-Cola is the best, and yet, do you know how many adverts they churn out every day?
They are continuously improving.
So what makes you think you have arrived? Everything is evolving like every day. I mean, the way everybody's talking about AI, the way we're talking about tools, you know, and all of those things, there's no way, despite the fact that I'm in my late 50s, and because of what I do, I cannot sit back and just say, oh, this can't affect me. Things change, people evolve, technology is evolving, but there's something that technology will never duplicate: a human spirit.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Money and People podcast, the show that connects the dots between financial success and the power of human capital. On our show today, we have a very special guest, and we're talking all things publishing and life. And we're honored and privileged to have in our midst Mr. Sydney Kasanda. Mr. Kasanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay. And to get everything started, and for people who have never heard of you or do not know you, who is Sydney Kasanda?
The long version or the short version?
Which one do you like? We'll
The
leave it
short
up to you.
version. The short version. Previously a banker for almost 28 years, and been book editor for the last 9 years now. Father of 2, grandfather of 4. Yeah, that's about it.
So you give us a short version. We're looking for the long one. We're looking for the long one, but that's great. Can you take us through your journey from having a great job to falling ill, losing your legs, and eventually becoming a very successful book publisher? And we'll get to your bragging rights soon. There are a lot of bragging rights here.
I don't know whether we would call it a success story yet. I've always been in banking, in the financial services industry. I mean, I joined banking when I was quite young. I mean, I must have been 19 or 20, I think. So I went through the motions, and it took a toll, like most things always do.
Yeah.
I went through high blood pressure. I went through all kinds of conditions, including cancer, which is what led me to even leave the industry in January of 2016. Now, when you come from a background where you have spent almost all your adult life, you don't know what to do with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I ended up, because at the time, not only was I, at one point for almost a year, I was bedridden, but then I had an active mind.
Yeah.
I just couldn't walk. And when I finally got to be in a wheelchair and using crutches, I needed to think outside my confines. And reading was one thing that I do fairly easy. And logic was to edit.
Mm-hmm.
So it started with one time talking to my pastor. I'm like, I like the sermon that you did the other day. Why don't you turn that into a chapter for a book?
Mm-hmm.
And that is how the whole thing started.
Interesting.
So, as they say, the rest is history, but that was the genesis. I didn't become an editor because I thought I could write better English or because I wanted to control people's sentence structures.
Mm-hmm.
I became an editor because I was trying to stay alive. It saved me.
Yeah, that's really powerful because I know how hectic banking is. I mean, depending on the position you have, the travel, the late nights and all of that stuff, you're always running around meeting customers, and all of a sudden that has to stop. But also, I like the fact that you had this open mind because to be in church, to see a sermon, and to actually see what you can do with the information and package it. Very few people have that gift. Usually, sometimes we'll just look at it and move on, but to actually draw strength from that and to have that as a turning point. That's
Yeah,
really
you see, the thing is, sometimes we look at things as, oh, that thing happened.
mm-hmm.
But really, in all honesty, things don't just happen. There's there's a process that goes on
Yeah, yeah.
behind what we don't even think or see. In one way, I keep thinking that because I was in this situation and then it happened that, but it wasn't really that. When I trace it back,
Mm,
when I switched jobs, first I switched countries and then I switched countries again and then I switched
mm,
jobs. I ended up in Ndola. While I was in Ndola, I was in a church and something kept prompting me that I needed to communicate with people somehow.
yeah.
Without thinking, I went and bought a 20-foot shipping container, plonked it at the church, cut out some windows, got furniture out of my flat, put it in the put it in the
In the
container,
container,
got an air ticket on credit, flew to South Africa to Kum Books, bought books, put them in there, and told everybody you can read the books for free.
yeah. Wow.
Now, was that sudden? Was that telling me where I was headed? I don't know.
Mm,
Because when I really think about it again, I when I was doing that, something that kept hitting me was be the preacher to the preachers, be the pastor to the pastors.
mm,
So that's what I was seeking to do then. But then was it something that I was doing for myself? No, it was a prompting that I was
mm,
having, but it didn't make sense then.
indeed,
But then when I see where I'm at today, I don't edit looking for commas and full stops. I always ask the question, even when I'm reading the script, who are you talking
who are you
to?
talking to? Yeah.
Who do you want to communicate with?
Mhm.
So that is the kind of editing most do not like. Most editors do not like because it involves a lot of self-application and contextualizing
Mhm.
things, and you look at scripts from the reader's perspective,
Mhm. Mhm.
not just the author's. So that means every time your mind is working into spaces.
But doesn't that make the work even more powerful because it's no longer a job. It's more like a it sounds like a conversation. It sounds like a conversation that you're having, and the more effort you put into it, the more interesting and captivating it actually becomes.
You see, the thing is, somebody I worked with last year, he wrote 2 books last year,
Mm-hmm.
and he is in the academic space and things like that. But I think about 5 years ago, he asked a question. He says, what are the 5 things that make you?
Mm-hmm.
And that would change the way you see things. But there was one thing that he asked, and he said, what is it that you've been doing since you were a child? And however much you try to run away from them, they're still there, they're constant in your space. And if somebody had to ask you to do that for them, you would actually do it for free.
Mm.
That is what editing is to me.
Wow.
I would do it for free.
Wow. And that's
So it is because it's I now treat it as a business, and it's not just about a passion. It is a business, so I have to monetize it. But if I woke up tomorrow and I wanted to do something that is editing related, it is something that I love enough that I would do it for free.
Okay. So it's not work at all, is it?
No.
It's actually it's actually fun. I need to get to that stage. I need to get to that stage where it's just I'm just going to have fun, but making so much money out of it. Yeah. And what was the most difficult moment for you during the transition? And how did you find the strength to keep going?
The transition from what to where.
So this is the part where now you then have the illness, you leave the bank, you go into the period into the bed rest, so to say, for 1 year, and you then transition into editing. But this, what was it like?
It was like anything traumatic.
Yeah.
I mean, we can put all kinds of words to try and soften the blow, but that's just what it is. I mean, you get pain. It's a lot of pain. You have to remember that I went through the pain for almost 20 years before I had the surgery. I had all kinds of treatments here and in other countries, and it was very, very painful. I mean, in 2000, I was basically given 2 weeks to live.
Oh.
Yeah, I was given 2 weeks to live, and I had to decide whether I was going to die quietly or I was going to make peace with it. So I chose to make peace with it. So I asked the doctors if they could find a way of giving me a treatment that would prolong my life for a month, or if it was going to be the 2 weeks, then how quickly could we move things forward? Because I didn't want to go through all of that.
Yeah.
But that was 22, 20, that was 25 years ago.
From 2 weeks to 25 years.
That was 25 years
Wow.
ago. So
That's-
even when I went into a stage where I was going to have the amputation, I had mourned my loss for 20 years already.
Yeah.
So there was no more tears to cry. So when I got into that theater and they were cutting off the first leg, I was like, good riddance. Then when they told me they were going to discharge me, I said, no. I had the problem with the left leg before the right
Before
one.
okay.
So I'm not leaving the hospital unless you cut off the left one.
So initially the plan was just to cut one.
No, I went there because I had a problem with
Yeah.
with one leg
Yeah.
that within 24 hours, if they didn't cut it off, because I developed gangrene, if it went past my pelvis, there was nothing
Then
they could have
yeah.
done. So they cut off the right leg. But then the left leg was the one that had given me problems for more years. So when they cut off the right leg, the left one was completely useless. It became actually a hindrance and a danger. So I requested the hospital to cut off the left leg. So it was a decision that I made. Otherwise, the left leg was going to kill me before my time.
Wow.
So when you ask, how did I transition? I had already mourned what I was losing physically. So the question was, even if I cried,
What?
how is that going to help anybody?
Yeah.
Even me.
Yeah.
So now I had to see myself through different lenses. I had to accept and say, this is what has happened. Now, where do we go from here? I could either sit and say, why me? Or as our good friend Kulusu said, he told me about a month ago, he says, Sydney, I know a lot of people, but I can't pick a single person who has pivoted like you have. So now I ask myself, I said, first of all, what is pivot?
What is pivot?
So I had to ask, I said, but what have I pivoted? Because the only pivot I know is the pivot that sprinkles water for you to grow wheat, and the pivot that you use in Excel to tie
Pivot, your
to tie
pivot table.
narratives to
Yeah,
figures.
yeah.
So I said, okay, so where did I
Which,
pivot?
which pivot? Is it the Excel one or
Yeah.
is it the center
Or
pivot?
is it the center pivot? So he says, think about it. You worked in the banking industry for years. You got to resident vice president, and then you left. You didn't turn back and say, oh, I'm going to do something within the lines of banking. You left. And then you created something out of nowhere.
Unimaginable stuff.
So that is the pivoting he was talking about.
Yeah.
He says, you got into an industry and you put your stamp on it. Have I put my stamp on it? I don't know. Remember, I've been working through my passion. I'm not working through, oh, I want to be the best in this. You wake up every morning with the stress of, I want to conquer the world. No. Always for me, every project, for some reason, it feels like it's a new one. It doesn't feel like I did this last week.
Yeah.
No, every single one of them, I talk to the author as though that is the only human being that's important to me in my life in that moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that is where my pivoting has taken me. Maybe that is where my difference lies.
Okay. I think we need to quote Kulusu Chisola so that he explains. That's one. Number two, I think that maybe it's time Kulusu Chisola did some writing of his own.
As for him, I don't think we should even talk about him because I'm tired of asking him.
No, because it's on the show. So Kulusu, we are coming for you. We are going to write and edit. We hope he's right. We even hashtag him. Hashtag Kulusu, tell him to write. Because I think, look, the beauty about a lot of individuals we have sometimes, and we haven't gotten permission for Kulusu to talk about him, but it's we have a lot of good things that we've done, impacted a lot of people and so on. But we do not have it written somewhere to seal it for, generations that will come after us. And I think, a person like Kulusi is one person who's done, I mean, he was on our show, of course, and you could see his journey, the things he's been through, moving from being an intern at UTH to being a CEO of, one of the leading microfinancing institutions that we have in the country and probably beyond our borders as well. That's a huge journey. A lot of we sometimes take certain things for granted, but I think there are a lot of people that could benefit from his story. There are a lot of people that could benefit from a lot of individuals' wisdom. So
being an editor is one thing, but being an editor with a bias towards storytelling, that is an advantage that I think I have tried to find for myself. You see, like recently, take for example the launch that we did in February for Mizinga Melu's book.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a huge thing for me. There's absolutely no denying it. But when we were working on that publication, there was nothing in my head of, oh, I'm going to do this book for the great Mizinga Melu. No, I was looking at Mizinga Melu as, this is a person that is seeking my services and I want to give her the best. So when I was working on her story, for example, it is the humanity that I kept finding, these nuggets of this is not just a CEO, this is a human being, this is a
Mm-hmm.
person. And that is the person that I kept getting to connect with
Yeah.
as I moved
Yeah.
along. And that is the same thing that I am finding myself doing more and more, because there's nothing that is more compelling than a human story. There's another person. I didn't tell her I was going to talk about her, but because she's very, very significant to me
Mm-hmm.
in my life right now.
Yeah.
You had her on the show, Leah Mtonga.
Ah, Leah. Yes. Yes.
So Leah and I have been working on her book, which she's been talking about,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
like in a like in her publications on LinkedIn about her forthcoming book.
Mm-hmm.
This is a book that we've been working on since mid of last year. You know, where you're getting things from everywhere, and then you start sieving through things and says, who are we talking to?
Mm-hmm.
Who are they seeing Leah the human, the mother, the wife? Are they seeing Leah only as the company or the board secretary?
Yeah.
So it is trying to put these two beings and bring them together. And that is the essence I always seek when I when I'm telling when I'm storytelling in these manuscripts that I get. So that's why I'm saying each manuscript for me is
It's
personal.
personal. And that's different because it sounds like you're not ticking boxes.
No,
You,
you see, that's the problem.
yeah.
I can't tick a box.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I think there was a script I was looking at, and then some people came back and said, no, here after the colon, you should have done this, and after the comma, you should have done that. And I'm like, that's very nice. Thank you very much. But has the shifting of the colon to a capital, lower case, changed the narrative? If I put the comma in the wrong place, you may end up killing somebody.
Yes.
Because it has lost its meaning,
Mm-hmm.
its intended meaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
But whether I use the lowercase or an uppercase.
Then what? The key is the message, the substance.
So that is what sometimes I have to be very careful about. Which essence of me am I bringing in? Am I purely using my learned knowledge and intellect?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I also going with my human spirit driven purpose?
I'm going to vote for human spirit and purpose.
So that is what I constantly
Yeah.
have to choose.
Mm-hmm.
It's always between two things.
And I think you can feel it in the writing. You can. I don't know. I've done a bit of writing. I mean, not at your level. It's not even. No, 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 no. Me, I just wrote 1+1. But anyway, point being, you find when you write something from the heart, I think it becomes a lot more relatable. And I don't know, people have a way of sifting through what was a job and what was something, an individual was tying passionate to, and people would gravitate towards passion. And I think it's more captivating. I think that's the experience I've had. But ticking boxes, sounding intellectual, it's very nice, but
Yes.
also it doesn't have longevity. If you ask me, it's good in the moment you launch, it's big, it's that. 2 weeks, no one will talk about it anymore. But people follow passion.
I
People
mean, we
follow.
live in a world now, everything is evolving like every day. I mean, the way everybody's talking about AI, the way we're talking about tools, and all of those things, there's no way, despite the fact that I'm in my late 50s, and because of what I do, I cannot sit back and just say, this can't affect me. Things change, people evolve, technology is evolving, but there's something that technology will never duplicate: a human spirit.
Yep.
It will, however, whichever way they do it. So that is when I'm pivoting, that is my fulcrum.
So back on pivoting.
So that is my fulcrum because it is from that center that I make everything that's going on around me spin.
Wow, it's amazing. That is amazing. And in terms of challenges, what are some of the biggest challenges you have faced, especially when you started with the editing business? And how did you overcome them?
Editing is not a regulated industry or sector. Especially in our country.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many things that I didn't know and I wanted to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, I started from a premise of passion, much more than a learned skill. But then when you get into the industry, you try to find who is the best in
Mm-hmm.
whatever is going on and hope to get some insight or knowledge from them. Much of it seemed like a guarded secret or a state secret. So you couldn't easily get information. But then, because I wanted to learn and because I thought that editing was something that was needed by most, I let my ignorance out to the public. Yeah, I let my ignorance out where I started writing articles on my Facebook page
Mm-hmm.
about the things that I didn't understand, about the things that I thought needed to be looked at, not addressed because I didn't know who was going to address it.
Yeah.
But as I went on with that, that is how I started finding my traction. But then I also found that if anybody I was working with kind of, in a way, I felt mistreated, I had no recourse to anywhere or to anybody. Even now, it is not different. If an author, for example, marginalizes me,
Mm-hmm.
I have nowhere to go and say, this is what I have experienced.
Mm-hmm.
While an author can write something negative about me and it goes viral and it destroys me.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? So that is the challenge that I still have to keep navigating in the industry.
It's actually something that needs a lot of attention because, one bad article can,
One article can destroy me.
yeah, yeah.
And then what is even more challenging is because of my mobility limitations,
Mm-hmm.
I can only get to certain places. I'll give you an example. Just getting here today, somebody had to remove the cones from the drive for the car to come and park somewhere midway up the ramp for me to get into the wheelchair because we couldn't use the
Mm-hmm.
stairs.
Yeah.
You see what
And
I
that's
mean?
a driveway.
You see
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So now, imagine the kind, and this is a big building. Now, imagine where I have to keep experiencing that every day. Just yesterday, I actually did an article on my page. Just yesterday, at the lodge where I'm staying, they had to remove the wooden door from the hinges to the bathroom for me to get in with my wheelchair. We were talking,
Yeah.
was it last week?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said, but how do you get about? I don't. I end up getting confined in my own space because I find moving around an inconvenience of it, unimaginable measure. I can't, if I don't have a car, I can't get onto public transport. Our public transport does not cater for persons like me. That means I have to use a cab. So either I use a cab or I buy a car. Now, remember, you're talking about a demography of people that have been, one, taken out of the economic cycle. That means majority do not have jobs. That means they do not have income. That means they are dependent on somebody. So now their whole existence has to be financed somehow.
Somehow, yeah.
By who? So if they can't work, that
How are
means
they
they
going
can't
to pay?
earn. That if
Yeah.
they can't earn, then how are they going to go about their business?
Yeah. So who's going to pay for the cab? Who's going
Who's
to
going to pay for the car? Who's going to
and
all
the
of them?
and I'm guessing the accommodation bit, the lodging, the ones that might cater for
For
that
me,
would be the pricier.
they're more expensive because as it is, I can't find a lodge or a hotel reasonably priced that has a bathtub because I can't use a shower. How am I going to get into a shower? So just for me to be here, I planned this from almost a month ago from the first time that we.
Yes, from this,
Remember,
yeah.
I even told you, I said, I can't just get up and leave.
Yeah, I remember that.
For me to make a trip, I have to start planning it a week or 2 weeks in advance. I don't have that luxury.
And that also starts affecting all other activities. So how
Everything.
much planning is
How much
required?
planning? So you see, that means now for my work, that means everything that I do is online, right? Yeah, it's supposed to be online. I try to connect to MTN, I have no network. I try to connect to Airtel, the lines are dropping. What do I do?
Yeah.
So now I have to keep fighting all of these challenges. Some of them are physical, some of them are not. I mean, there are people who ask me and say, oh, yeah, I'd like to come to your office and meet you. I'm like, you just met me in my office. Didn't we talk on the phone? Because where else are we going to meet?
Yeah, like exactly. So
like, I'm here in Lusaka now. If I have to say, oh, I'm in Lusaka, can I meet with you and talk about your script over coffee? Oh, no, but I'm busy today. You know what I mean? So that means now, when I have the time to try and see everybody, now I have to fit into their schedules. That is the hard part.
no, I mean,
I can't get into buildings. I can't get into certain restaurants. And there's this thing of, oh, as a person with disability fighting for my independence, there are places where I can't go unless somebody who is able-bodied is helping me. The only other way for me to do that is to buy an electric wheelchair. How much does that cost?
yeah, it comes down to the earnings again.
Earnings.
I mean, they have to be financed.
If I want a car, I have to buy a car that has got all of those gadgets.
Special gadgets,
Special
yeah,
gadgets.
yeah.
Otherwise, I will be dependent on another human being for my very existence.
But have we seen any change, any improvement in terms of structure, design, I don't know, road designs?
Very little. Very little, if any.
Yeah.
Very, very little. Yeah, some buildings now, they're having that as part of their structures or their architectural designs, but most that we actually need are not friendly. I mean, I'll give you an example. The one place that creates the highest number of persons with disabilities is UTH.
Yeah.
It churns out tens of disabled people every day, yet it is the most disability unfriendly institution you can ever find.
And you wonder how, I mean, not to be prejudiced, but how hard can it be? Because from a distance, and forgive my ignorance, it sounds like just a bit of structural amendments here and there.
Structural amendments, but then when you're only doing them to meet a regulation or
Ticking a box.
ticking a box. I mean, because yes, UTH does have ramps,
Yeah.
but can somebody with a wheelchair actually go over those ramps? That is the question. Because if you talk about ramps, yes, you will they will take you and say, here is one, there's one that is behind G11.
Mm-hmm.
It is a beautiful ramp when you look at it, but my goodness me, if you are not careful, that ramp is going to take you out into outer space.
Oh, wow.
Because it is so steep that even a person who is wheeling you from behind, they have to have their own brakes in their shoes.
Yeah, their own stability.
So, but that is the reality of what life of a disabled person is. But the thing is this again, up until I was on crutches, I hardly saw people with disabilities. If ever, we only become conscious of how other people are affected only when we get closer to them.
Yeah.
So even for me, it's not that I was always conscious about everything that people with no legs were going through. No, I only came to learn of it, to learn about it and understand it only when I became part of the demography. So there's nothing like, oh, these people aren't doing this, or these people are being no. It is that it is not in their immediate consciousness.
Would it then help if there was a level of representation,
Of course,
at
of
least
course
at
they
a
would.
policy level,
Of
somebody
course.
who's able to, who's able to relate a lot more?
No, but then you see, what I find is some things, I think we've gotten to that point, honestly speaking, that sometimes when you just keep talking about things, you never get the full satisfaction. How many institutions have been established that talk to policy? You've got the Zambia Agency for Persons
Yes,
with
persons with
Disabilities. You've got
disabilities.
all of these agencies. Disability didn't start 5 years ago. We have over 2 million persons with disabilities in this country. So it just didn't happen yesterday. Unless the people that are charged with the responsibility, like most things in our country, it is not about speaking to policies or about documenting policies. Everything that doesn't work in our country is failure to implement. Everything that needs to have been said about disability has been said.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to say, really. The thing is, what will it take to implement? That's all. I can write about it, but then what? It's the implementation that is failing.
We have to get to implementing. We have to. And I hear you, and I think I agree. Talking has been done. But
There's so much talking that has
yeah,
been done already.
but can we get some results? Non-tick box results, of course.
Of course.
Actual, actual work done. And I mean, we can only hope that, we're going to see brighter days going forward. Yeah. What inspired you to venture into book writing, into book publishing? and editing. And how did you, what was the starting point? How did it, how did you know that, yes, this is it, we've taken off now? Have you taken off now?
Remember, it started from a premise of passion,
Yeah.
and then it transcended into giving a service to people who
Yes.
needed it.
Yeah.
I don't know when it transcended, but I was given a responsibility that I rejected. I said, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you remember Dr. Roland Msiska, the
He,
late Roland Msiska.
what is it?
He was a
Oh,
secretary to
secretary
the
to the cabinet.
cabinet.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
He is the man, he is the one man who sent me into my stratosphere.
Yeah.
I never met the man, sadly, but he he was writing things about things that were happening in this country, but he was talking about them in more of a prophetic kind of way. And he called it the transformation of a nation.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody connected me and said, Sydney, read this. And I read, and I'm like, my goodness. So it was actually WhatsApp messages. And I
Yeah.
collected all of that and turned it into like a 10-page manuscript. And I sent it to him. I said, this is what you said can look like. And he told me, he actually responded because I never ever spoke to him on the phone. So
Mm-hmm.
I never even knew what his voice sounded like. But we communicated strictly via email. And he said God had told him that he needed to write 5 books. So he didn't know where to begin. And that was his beginning. And from that, we worked together and ended up publishing Transformation of a Nation. Now, this is where I say he sent me into my stratosphere. When I went in for my surgery to have my legs cut off, I was in the middle of working on his manuscripts.
Oh.
When I got out of theater, the first thing I thought of was I need to finish Doc's manuscript. Immediately, the anesthesia wore off. I was on my laptop and I was working. When I finished, I sent him the manuscript. He says, no, send it to my wife. So I sent it to the wife. And then I said, okay, so now you need a typesetter, you need a graphic designer. He said, how much will all of that cost? And the printing and everything. So I told him, I said, for this and this and this and this is what the total amount will be. Next thing, I received a message from the wife. It says, oh yeah, I've received the instruction. Please give me 3 days to have everything sorted. And they sent the whole amount to me.
They saw the vision.
So I had never printed anybody's book. I had edited, I had proofread, now they tell me publish it. So now I had to start working with printers, I'm working with graphic designers. So it was Dr. Roland Msiska's book that really got me into the publishing space.
Wow. What do you think he would say to you now?
I don't know. I don't know, because he was the one person I really, really wanted to meet.
Yeah.
And when I heard he died, actually, tell the truth, even now I still break down every time I think of him because I never got a chance to meet him.
Yeah, but have you met the wife? Is she still
No,
around?
yeah, she's still around, but I never met her. I mean, the thing is, I remember when I read his obituary and they called him Doctor this and Doctor this and Doctor that and Doctor this and an author. And I thought about it and I said, I was part of creating
Yeah.
that narrative with him.
I mean, I would imagine he really I'd imagine you did impact and he did recognize, because nobody ever puts title on something they don't
No.
respect. Doctor, we worked hard for it, you earn
Yeah.
it, and so on. So to even put the author bit, must
So,
have meant a lot to
so when
him.
I look at it and I say author, yeah, I was part of that
Yeah,
authorship.
yeah. Oh, that's great. And now we come to bragging rights. I thought I did make this promise. So I won't even ask the question. Just give us your bragging rights. Whose books have you published? Who have you worked with?
Is that really necessary?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we need to know. We need to celebrate you. So this is the only way we can do. We need to know who's
The
who.
thing is, my editorial life has been like a journey. It's not static. It's not something that happened. It's something that became a part of
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
The first person who ever saw it in me before I even saw it in myself was Dr. Nelly Longwe Kangwa.
Hmm.
She was my pastor. And when I left the bank in January of 2020, of 2016, the first thing she said was, "You need a break. Let's get out of this country." We jumped onto a plane and went off to South Africa. Went to South Africa. We jumped into a car and drove to Botswana.
Wow.
Yes. So she, on the 30th of April 2016 was the first time I ever saw a book that was the first book I ever published that
Hmm.
was launched. It had so many errors. But we celebrated it.
Yeah.
That was the first book. Then from Dr. Nelly, somebody saw her book and said, "Oh, who did this for you?" It was Sydney. That is how I got to know Chijika
Hmm.
Monga.
Yeah.
She wrote the book Soaring on a Wing. It was about her accident, and next thing the book won the Zambia Woman of the Year award in the new author category 2017. The third one, who saw Chijika's book was Humphrey Simaunga,
Hmm.
who was a teacher, and he wrote a book about the youth. That is how we did
Mm.
The Price of Being a Youth,
Yeah.
which he took to the Minister of General Education. They did an evaluation, and
Mm.
it was recommended for grade 10 to grade 12
Oh,
English
yeah.
as an English supplementary reader. Then there was this young lady from Kawe, Preacher Muyeleko. She wrote fiction, and I had never edited fiction. That was my first attempt. Okay, I sucked, but we did it anyway,
You
and
pulled it off.
we pulled it off. Yeah, and she only published her book years later.
Yeah.
But in those years later, I went back to her and said, "No, you know what? You gave me a first chance to edit fiction. Let me go back and rework your manuscript," which was only last year or the year before last. So we reworked the manuscript. It's now perfect. I can put my hand on my heart. Then somebody took a chance and sent me poetry.
Mm.
Some guy called Collins Malao.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
So I edited that. I'm like, guys, but I've never edited poetry before. But editing that poetry for Collins was actually preparing me to edit two poetry authors.
Hmm.
The first one was Mimi. She wrote the um, the Black Mad Woman. My goodness me, she's written very beautiful poetry. The second one, after I did that one, I don't know whether you've heard of the guy, what is it name? Kuni Sata. He's a poet.
Yeah, I think I've heard. I know a few poetry guys. I
He
think I
did The Black King.
think I've seen it.
I edited that.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had the first person who was a published author and decided to take a chance on me was Ingrid Nyame. She was the author of The Colored Vine. She was the
Yeah.
author of now she's done Hymn of the Womb. I edited Cupid's Arrow. That was a chance she took on me.
So it's been moving
It's
from
been
strength to
it's
strength.
been progressive.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not something that, so it's things like, and it's things where somebody tells another and tells another and
Yes.
tells another, because through Sata's book, he got to meet somebody who I'm working with now on a book that is completely out of what I would call my genres. Because now I've done a cookbook for Fazila Lulat, for her cakes. I mean, she does some of the most fantastic cakes I've ever
Wait,
tasted.
so does she bring the cakes while you're writing?
No,
Do you
we've
like taste as you write?
there's recipes, there's
I'd rather eat as well. Like, taste like this.
there's all of those things.
Yeah.
So putting that together has been one of my greatest highlights. I'm like, you know what? I've I've been taken out of my comfort zone, but again, what do you do that you would do for free? Remember that?
Yep. Circles back to it.
When I left the banking industry, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was reading and trying to create this script for my pastor, but there was something else that I did. I remembered what my mother taught me when I was 9. She taught me how to bake. So I started baking cakes in my kitchen and I called it the home baker.
Oh, wow.
Does it make sense that I am now editing a
Cookbooks.
cookbook?
So it's actually easy. So it's something that you're really passionate about.
But then when I was baking, did I think this is where it was leading? So when you start connecting the dots, that is what you are looking for.
Shouldn't we be having this conversation with kids, with
You see,
parents and kids?
like when I worked in the banking industry, I worked in operations, I worked in internal audit, I worked in internal control. When I am editing, what am I looking for? Fine detail.
Yeah.
What do you do when you are in internal control or internal audit? You are looking for the missing
The
links.
missing link. Processes like this. Have you
Process it
been?
with
This is the
that.
practice. Are they
So
aligned?
now, 25 years I spent in this space of looking at the links. What do you think I'm doing in a manuscript?
It's the same thing.
So when there's a book that we published in November of 2023 called The Serengeti Lion Kings. That is a book by an author in the UK who is a Zambian. When that manuscript was sent to me, somebody referred him to me. And the first thing I said was, no, I've never edited a book where animals talk. But that book became so brilliant that somebody actually called to find out how they could get in touch with the author because they wanted to do an animation series on it. Then you have a person like Dr. Akanimo Odon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is a man who is very, very well educated. He's with Lancaster University.
Yeah.
And somehow he found me in Zambia and trusted me to edit his 2 books, which make the trilogy of the career code, the graduate code, and the professional code.
Wow.
And then you've got a person like Eve Banda, who this was her second publication and trusted me to work on that and believe I could deliver it.
Wow.
And Eve Banda prefers Nizingamelo. And
And we just keep going.
so bragging rights, yes, they are bragging rights.
You have to brag.
But
Let's not be humble here. You have to, no, no, no. I will not allow being humble. No modesty.
do you know,
This is
dude, do you know what it feels like to have so much gratitude that you just don't
mhm.
even know what else to think? Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
that brings to me.
No, I mean it's fascinating. I mean, from where it started, though, I mean, my one takeaway from here is don't say no,
No,
because there are certain publications which sounded like they were outside of your comfort zone. You could have
yes,
easily said no,
yeah.
but it's those which actually probably brought the stronger links, the strongest links.
I mean, there's this thing, there's this young lady, my goodness me, that thing, that lady just completely took me not even out of my comfort zone, but out of the borders of the comfort zone.
Out of the zone, out of the whole zone.
There's this young lady, her name is Predas Goramani.
Yeah.
She's in Ireland. She found me somehow as well. We worked on that manuscript called Happily, Happily, Happily Ever After, or Not Happily Ever After.
Mm.
Can't even remember the title now. That book, we worked on it, and you know, by the time I finished working on the last, I think, on her manuscript, where you feel that you are missing a partner, that is how I got attached to her script.
Wow.
I knew every character in that book like they were my relatives. And that sort of thing where you are writing about a character that you don't like, but you have to write about them anyway, that was her book.
Oh, wow. Wonderful. That's wonderful. And speaking of which, what advice would you give to someone who is facing, you know, especially a major setback and struggling to find their way forward?
You know, we handle things differently.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no template. There's nothing like, oh, remember how this one handled it? They how they handled it so well. There's like that thing, like there's a term that I don't like. Oh my goodness, you are so strong. No. People are not strong. People barrel through the kind of whatever
Get
challenges
by.
they're
Yeah.
going through
Yeah.
because at some point you only have you to depend on.
That's true.
When the lights are switched off, when nobody is ticking your Facebook posts, who are you?
When no one is liking your memes.
When no one is liking your memes,
Yeah.
and when nobody's even getting in touch with you to find out how you are, who are
Who
you?
are you? That's where you start knowing you.
You have to learn how to be comfortable in your own skin and in your own space. Until you make friends with that, everything else becomes superficial. Because once they are ripped off, what happens?
That's very deep. So I need to know myself first. Need to know myself and start positioning myself such that even if it's not working, it's still me.
You
And
need to know, and I'll give you an example. The first thing that helped me to learn who I am was losing everything. I lost my job. I lost my house. I lost my car. I lost my furniture. I lost my clothes. I lost everything you could think of. The only thing that I had was with clothes I was wearing that were on my back.
Wow.
That was my first lesson in never getting attached to anything. So when I learned that by not being attached to something, then I start attaching to me. When I lost my legs, I had already learned what losing felt like. The only difference was that this was cutting off a part of my body.
Yeah.
But then the thing was, yeah, so how do we move on?
Life
It's
has to go
very
on.
easy to stay in your space of mourning and worrying and weeping. It's very easy.
Feels like it's comfortable. It's a bit
Yes.
comfortable there because
Because you
everybody at
justify it.
yes, yeah, yeah.
The hard part is where you don't cry. How do you do
How do you do that? Mm, that's tough. That's really deep.
that?
And for the future, what are your future goals for publishing? Where's Sydney Kasanda going?
I had an interesting conversation with somebody yesterday, and he asked me the similar question
Yeah,
actually. Says, you know, said you've been talking, but where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? I'm like, yeah, you know, I just want to be editing books. He says, yeah, you are already editing books, but where do you want to
yeah,
go?
yeah. What's the end goal?
What's the end goal? My immediate response was, I want to have a publishing house. Then he asked me, are you talking about a building structure or what exactly do you want? I'm like, oh. So, what impact do you think, what impact do I think I want to create? I said, okay, now that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, my biggest challenge right now, in terms of Sydney Kasanda, yes, I am comfortable in my own skin, legless or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. The thing is, have I duplicated myself or multiplicated myself? Now, that is where my biggest milestone is going to be. I want to be able to pick up my phone and say, I know the best graphic designer, I know the best printer, I know the best typesetter, I know the best animator, I know the best proofreader. And all of these people, while we are working together, I want them to create their own masterpieces within their own spaces. If you are a proofreader, you are working with Sydney Kasanda, I want your proofreading business to grow to an extent where other people hire you because of the work that we are doing together. If you're a graphic designer, be so good that the moment we say, I work with Libro's editing, I work with Sydney Kasanda, you become a brand because of your attachment to me. You see what? So I'm not looking for a building. I am looking for people.
That's leadership. Well, that's how I define my leadership. To be able
So
to.
the thing is, will you publish? Yes, I publish books. That is a given. We know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh, will you edit? Duh. You've read what I edit, but is that the all of me?
What else?
As long as I'm not pouring into somebody else,
Yeah.
my cup will always be full and fester because I'm not recycling. It's like I'm just keeping my same water in my same vessel. I need to pour it out. That is what, for the last 2 months, that is what has kept me awake. And yesterday, it became very clear what I want to do and how I want to do it.
You wanted, yeah. No, that's really powerful.
Because when you think about it, I had 28 years experience in banking in different institutions: Zanaco, Citibank, Standard Chartered, EcoBank,
Those are
Industrial
big.
Credit Company. These are big organizations. Okay. I started editing in 2016, like I say, January of 2016. We are now 2025. If you ask anybody right now, do you know Sydney? How come I edit?
It's no longer banker.
It's no longer the banker. You see what I mean? So when Kulusu says pivoting, that is the pivoting. People have even forgotten that I was a resident vice president of Citibank.
I never knew that.
Because now I have become wholeheartedly an editor. So it's like I'm the yin yang. So now, in this thing that I have created as Sydney the editor, that is something that if you work with me as a graphic designer, as a podcaster, linked to Sydney Kasanda Libros, you are riding on what has taken 28 years to build.
It's been a huge journey.
So that is something that I wish I had, and which I now know if only I had asked the right questions, I would have sat on somebody's shoulders. Because for as long as you have monopoly, or what you think is your monopoly of knowledge, trust me, it will never grow. I've seen people who thought they knew it all, and now they're struggling to find their feet in the same industry that they previously
That they-
dominated,
yeah.
because people have moved on.
People move on.
People move on. And trust me, even the Bible says, if you won't praise me, I'll use the stones. So what makes you think you are the best choir? That's why if you ask me, Henry, I'll never be the best in what I do. Never. Because the day I become the best in what I do, that means I have stopped learning.
Can only start coming down.
So every day, honestly speaking, when I find a comma placed in a position I never expected and it changes the sentence structure, I'm like, wow, how come I never saw that? How come I never? So every day I learn. When the moment I hear somebody say, I am the best, and I'm like, you know that Coca-Cola is the best, and yet, do you know how many adverts they churn out every
And
day?
they're continuously improving.
So what makes you think you have arrived?
Who are you? Yeah.
So that is how I see me. So when people say, oh no, but you've been a success where?
Who told you this is my journey?
Yeah. Because the day I become the presidential autobiographer, then maybe we
Mr.
are talking.
President, you've seen, yeah? We'll tag you in, I promise.
When presidents start writing their autobiographies, now that is
Then
interesting.
we're somewhere.
When first ladies start writing about their time in Plot One, in State House, in the White House.
Then we're
I mean, I read Becoming and I read The Promised Land, and I'm like, why doesn't this become the standard for our country? There's so much history in this country. There's so much material. We are in 2025. We had an opposition leader who won by 1 million votes, and not a single book has really been written that's authentic about that process.
that process.
No.
And that's stuff
Because
of legend.
there are so many things that would have been learned from that process. Then we wouldn't have the kind of mediocre debate that we now have on Facebook, where people now start, picking. No, we would have constructive debate and say, this is how the West was won. But now,
It's a different. Wow. Mr. Kasanda, it has been an honor having you. I have learned a lot, and I am sure our audience will tap a lot of wisdom and a lot of good things from this conversation. It's really, really been great having you today, and all the best on that journey. From what we've seen, from what I've heard just listening, I think you're halfway there. But that's just me. But I know you're halfway there. And I'm not a prophet, but I'm good at projecting the future. So from Money and People podcast, it's been an honor having you, and we're so grateful. And to our audience, please make sure to comment, write about your experiences, like and share as well. So from all of us, it's thank you so much and bye.